Mean Old Lion Media presents Corner Table Talk.
Hi, this is Corner Table, and I'm your host, Brad Johnson. Here we explore subjects related to food plus drink plus culture. If you have questions or comments about our show, you can always reach me at brad@postandbeamhospitality.com. So having spent decades in the restaurant business between New York and Los Angeles, I've had the good fortune of meeting some great people. And when you've been around as long as I have, you get to watch the trajectory of their lives. Even if the conversations were limited, there is still a bond or a connection formed in the pleasantries and few moments of conversation over the years. My guest today has almost every award an actor can have, including an Academy Award, Golden Globe, and 4 Emmy Awards. To put it in numbers, she has 107 nominations at last count. That might change, I don't know, 107 and 59 wins. That's a better than 50% win average, which I think is pretty good. Her feature film directorial debut garnered awards and plenty more nominations, including 3 Academy Award nominations. She made history as the first Black female director to debut a film at the 77th Annual Venice International Film Festival. One Night in Miami was the film. And of course, I am talking about one of the most in-demand people in Hollywood, the lovely and so very talented Regina King. Welcome to Corner Table Talk.
Hello, Brad Johnson. Wow, that was quite the introduction. I don't think I've heard my batting average before.
So, Regina, I kick things off with what I call short order questions, just a few things to fire at you and get your quick response. So tell me, what is in heavy rotation on your playlist? What are you listening to these days?
In heavy rotation on my playlist. You know, it's funny because I'm still like listening to, the classics. I was just listening to, I played on my Spotify brand new heavies. I hadn't listened to brand new heavies in a while. And so day before yesterday, I had that back in my rotation. I'm sure that there's someone current right now that I think is awesome, but they're not coming to mind.
Mm-hmm. I don't mind. I rediscovered some old Tower of Power a couple of weeks ago on Spotify, man. And it was like, it was hearing it for the first time, driving around and hearing the Lenny Williams vocals and those horns again. It was beautiful.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's so interesting is that a lot of the artists that I feel like I'm so familiar with, I am still discovering songs by them that I'd never heard before, like this Carlos Santana piece that he did to, I think it was for the one of the songs in Spartacus, in the film Spartacus, and had never heard his version of that before. And that's exciting for me when that happens because it feels still like new music.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Regina, what is your morning routine?
My morning routine is to get up, not a full stretch situation, but just, I've reached a certain age that I have to kind of warm up the body that's been in one position for the past 5 or 6 hours. And so kind of just like touch my toes and do that stretch where you hear a couple, cracks happen and then make a cup of tea. I don't brush my teeth until after I have my tea. That's probably nasty to some people, but the taste of toothpaste and tea don't really go together.
No, not at all. And I'm with you on the slow, easy, out of bed, don't want to pull anything.
Right? I still feel young, but it's just when you do get hurt, the recovery rate is not the same.
Not the same, no. And we cannot afford to be on the sidelines for too long. So, yeah. Tell me your favorite weekend breakfast.
Well, my favorite weekend breakfast that I make, and I really hate the favorites thing because what could be favorite for me right now may not be favorite in like a month. But right now, in this moment, favorite, I make waffles with banana walnut syrup and chicken sausage. That's my favorite. And if I'm feeling, real jazzy, I'll just match that sugar from the syrup with sugar from a mimosa.
Why not? If it's a sugary breakfast, we might as well, right?
Why not?
Why not? All right. So, best live musical performance you've ever seen?
Ooh, that is tough. Best live musical performance I've ever seen, ever, ever. I don't know. Maybe Duran Duran, or maybe Prince. It's tough because Duran Duran was like the first like concert I saw of just an artist that's like internationally known, and I was young. I was probably like 14, 15 years old. So that just really stuck with me. And then Prince just, I mean, Prince.
Yeah.
There's just not a moment when I wasn't singing along or wasn't just in awe of just his stage presence or the piano that was lifting up. It was like he had just enough theatrics, but it was all him.
Mhm.
It was just, so I would say those two, because the Duran Duran has more of that meaning for me, that made me very clear that I love seeing live music
Yeah.
in a space that, because it's one thing seeing live music in something small or quaint, and it's another thing seeing live music in a big, I'm saying arena. This is not like Wembley Stadium, but seeing a concert in Hollywood Bowl or the Greek, and then you go, no shade to the old Forum, but when you see a concert at the old Forum and then see a concert at the Bowl or the Greek, it's just a whole new meaning. And Duran Duran was like that for me.
Yeah. I haven't been to the new SoFi Stadium, but I've talked to a few friends who have been to concerts there. In fact, one just saw the Rolling Stones, and they said the acoustics and the sound was just incredible.
I've only been there for a game. I haven't been there for a show. So I wasn't really paying attention to the acoustics at the game.
No, but you were doing your fair shouting, I would imagine. Or are you a quiet spectator?
I was a quiet spectator because the Rams are my team because it's LA. They are not really my football team from coming up to now.
Okay. All right. Well, that takes me to my next question. Lakers or Clippers?
Oof.
Yeah.
Lakers.
Oh.
I laugh at Clipper fans.
That's cold. All right. Where have you not been that is high on your list to travel to?
Thailand.
Okay.
Yes, that is super high on my list. Everyone that I know that I trust their opinion who is gone, it makes me more excited about when I'll actually carve out the time to go. And the images are beautiful, and I love Thai food. And one of the things with travel that's a big deal for me traveling abroad is food. To experience the culture through the food. I love food, as do you, Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
And I love Thai food. I kind of lean towards the Asian cuisine.
I went to Bangkok maybe 20 years ago, and I was blown away by the street food. And corn on the cob on the street was just it was incredible. And I ate so much corn on the cob. I don't think I ate that much corn on the cob in my life, but I was killing it. Regina, the best advice you've been given?
I keep saying this thing because I ask this question often, and I'm always so cagey when it comes to advice, because sometimes I feel like, even though the question is asked, what's the best advice I've been given, I always feel like, especially now we're in this cancel culture,
Mm.
that, people miss that it was the best advice for me, or one of the things that stuck for me. And it's two things. One, my mom always would stress something that she called the 7 Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. as a child, it was annoying hearing that all the time. But once I became a young adult, I totally understood from an experiential place how preparation led to greater success.
Mhm.
So it was like that bit of advice made me, as a young adult, understand that luck is where preparation meets opportunity.
Absolutely. Finish this sentence for me, if you would. I have little patience for.
People that belittle children, because I feel like when you see people do that to other adults, people do that to other adults, that they see they can do that too, that they can get away with it. But they don't do that. People that are belittling adults, majority of people, no matter how much of an asshole you may be, you don't do that to all adults. You gauge that
Mhm.
situation, you do whatever it is, that psychological thing you do in your head to determine, okay, this is a person I can get away with this with. But when people do that to children, they're doing that to children because they know children usually can't fight back. They can't talk back. They can't say no. They can't demand the respect. I don't think those are really good people. And I really try not to be of the thought of that all people are good or bad, because I do feel like we're all a spectrum. We are, for the most part, I think, good people who do things that may be bad or do things that may be thoughtless. So I try not to put people in a good or bad box. Some people do land in there, but people who knowingly just disrespect children, I don't. They go in the bad box to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, there are rules to the road. I mean, we're all learning, but some things we have, little to no tolerance for, and I'm with you on that. So last one of these, Regina, who past or present would you most like to have at an intimate dinner party?
Only one person?
It's your show. We could sit here all day. You could name 100 if you like.
Be like, okay, and our show is wrapping up, and Regina said 900 names. That's always tough. I guess it would be Shirley Chisholm. I'm preparing to play her, and as I'm studying her, I just would really, really would want to just get in her mind and see. It's very interesting watching how calculated she is when she speaks and when she's delivering a message, whether it's in an interview or on stage. So I would want to know a little more about the brain, the genius behind that, and maybe Shirley. I probably always would want my mother at the table. I guess my mom, Shirley, and me would be a pretty enlightening, empowering, soul feeding conversation.
Yeah, no doubt. And I saw that that's a film that you have slated coming up that you're going to be starting soon. And I want to get into that a little bit later. Another Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, homegrown lady there. A lot of talent comes out of Bed-Stuy. So we'll touch on that in a minute. So before we go any further, how are you? How you doing?
I'm well. I'm well. Yes, I'm well.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for making the time. I know we were a little persistent. Ambassador Shabazz was on it. You were probably like, damn, what does this brother want? Why are they staying after me? So thank you for making the time. I appreciate it.
Can I ask, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you, Regina. I'm doing well. Managing the craziness of the last couple of years. I mean, I think it's an easy, quick answer to say I'm good. It can be a little deeper than that. But, I woke up this morning and the sun was out and my eyes were seeing, my ears were hearing, my legs were working. So, in that respect, and my family's good. So thank you for asking. So there are a lot of really nice things being said about you. Accolades are flowing. And I wanted to kick things off with a quote from October's Vanity Fair. And if somehow anyone in the audience out there missed this, Regina King graced the cover of Vanity Fair in October. And Regina, the photo was just absolutely stunning. I mean, you look beautiful. Congratulations on the cover. And were you happy with the experience? Were you happy with the result? Did you like the photo?
Well, I didn't dislike the photo. I just was very clear of when I look at my face up close on that photo, it just doesn't quite look like me. And, perhaps that's just self-perception. I don't think so, but it could be. But what I was really happy with is the time I was able to have with the journalist, the writer, Jesmyn Ward, um, who I believe it was Jesmyn um, that wrote that piece. And being, she's such a wonderful writer. And you always wonder after you've done a lot of interviews, for a piece in a magazine or paper or whatever, how is someone going to make it different? Because I'm such a guarded person. And, I tend to cut to 10 years later, if you're asking a question that still pertains to something that I still feel that way, I will give the same response. So, I'm always curious to see what a writer's approach is going to be. And I just found with Jesmyn that, one, it was very conversational, and we were able to touch on in spaces that we both have the same experience, but also different experience because we grew up in different places. And I just found that once I did read her piece, that I felt like that conversational, that aspect of the interview, it informed the article. I felt like she was speaking about me through us. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I just felt connected to it in a way that I've never really felt before, because I it's hard to read about yourself, and the way her prose allowed me to feel almost as if I was reading about someone else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it makes total sense. And let me read an excerpt from what she wrote. And the writer, as you mentioned, her name is Jesmyn Ward. And she had this to say, quote, I was a child the first time I saw Regina King on screen, and she was a child too. The first thing I noticed about her character, Brenda Jenkins on Room 227, was that she looked like me. She wore her hair the way I did, large bangs falling across her forehead, top pulled back in a ponytail. Through King, Brenda was the real deal. She was frank and inappropriate and funny and oblivious and messy and naive. She was genuine. There was much about her that I wanted for myself, most notably the ability to speak plainly from her perspective to adults, which was something I never saw in my world. Every time I see King on screen, she is real and immediate. So, to what you just said, Regina, and, I think about this generally when I think about you, is I think one of your most appealing qualities, and this is tricky as an actor, right? I would imagine, because you're playing different characters, but somehow there's this realness that you bring that is just you, and I think it just really resonates. And Jesmyn, she seemed to be saying the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just as an actor, and I've talked to other actors, I think I've heard a couple other actors who've expressed this same feeling about how we approach or receive, how we approach our art, how we receive our art. And while they're different characters, I think the thing that I do, we do, is find Regina within that character so that it is rooted in truth. So it's not so much, I don't want to say, okay, I'm playing, Angela at bar. Abar in Watchmen. And I'm not saying that it's Angela Abar as Regina, but there's got to be something that I connect with in that character, even if it's not really a good person, that I understand intrinsically to embody that character, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And, you've been doing this for a while, so I think you understand your method. And I wanted to connect that to, my dad was a restaurateur and did well for a portion of his life, but success didn't happen overnight. And he would often say of his success, man, I didn't get this from no hit record, you know. And when I think about you, I think about, I mean, you worked obviously very early on, as a young person, but to be experiencing the level of success that you are now, clearly you didn't just get this from no hit record. You have put in some time and, some years into this business. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting, Brad, that you bring that up, because I feel like there was a part of me, maybe as recent as 5 years ago, where just something switched for me, that I would, kind of be very humble and no thank you, and not really acknowledge for myself even that, wait a minute, no, I should be here. I have done the work to be here. I should be here. And I would say, like, around 5 years ago or so, I started embracing that, and embracing that in a way that it's still that I think in my mind I felt like a bit of that thought process could come off as conceit, or not express or lacking humility. And a few years ago, I realized that that doesn't lack humility. Actually, it's the opposite. If I'm not really in tune with my personal human experience, then it is gonna lack humility. So in all actuality, me kind of playing that back was just not fair, period. I have done the work to be where I am, and I continue to do it. And I should be able to say that, and I do say that now with gratitude and with pride.
And I think, Regina, to your point, I mean, it's so transparent what I would, consider to be a level of false humility, right? When you see people that have just continued to win and continue to do great, and then they pretend to not own it, but yet you really know that they do, And I wonder that's not you. I think what you just said is you, that you realized at a certain point that you needed to own that you had earned it. You were going to own it, acknowledge it, be humble and grateful. You can be all those things, but acknowledging it, I think, is important. So here's something that you said from a couple of years ago. I was just going to read to you and just get your reaction. You said, it's very cool to be my age and have this be new. Having this experience now, I see a whole nother regard for film. I love being an actor. It just feels good being Regina King. So what is the other regard you're referring to for film? And, you strike me as someone who's just always been comfortable in your skin. I've been acquainted with you for many years. I've never felt from anything that I've experienced with you that you weren't comfortable in your own skin, but you're saying something different here. You're talking about it feels good to be Regina King, and this experience that you're having now and seeing film differently. What are you talking about there? Can you break that down a little bit?
I mean, my guess is that, hearing it out of context, that I was speaking about my relationship with storytelling since I've become a director, and that's what I'm thinking. And in just while I'm not necessarily interested in directing something that I'm acting in again, I do feel like this past 10 years or 12 years of directing has just opened me up in a way when it comes to expression and also receiving. That feels new in a lot of ways, because as a director, I feel like I am just learning every moment, learning something about myself, learning something about other people, learning new ways of communication, learning how to not let go of an old way of communication, keep that right there on the side, because this actor here does not bode well with communicating in this style. So let me hold that and save that communication for this. It's just really fascinating how much psychology goes into, honestly, the whole production experience, the whole storytelling experience. As a director, I'm just I don't know. As an actor, I'm focused on my character and focused on perhaps maybe what that character's journey is in relation to another character as well as my character. But as a director, I am just involved in the entire process and having deeper conversations with the production designer or wardrobe designer or the prop master that I did not have before as an actor. And so these past, 10 or 12 years, it's definitely been it's been rewarding, and it continues to feel new.
Yeah.
Each project.
Listening to you describe that, I mean, it just sounds like the scale and the scope of observation that factors into your work as a director is just, I mean, it's everything, right? I mean, you're looking at the entire process as an actor. You're, concerned about your performance, of course, the other actors around you or the set or the light that you feel comfortable in. But as the director, it's 360.
Yes, absolutely that. It's 360. There is something so galvanizing about, the writer writes this script and then you see it. And then there's some things that you feel like, if we think maybe this scene should go so that this scene here really lands, or that this scene, maybe we want her voice to be maybe not as bold, because we want to build up to something later on and the payoff will be better. And then, so we have that. And then I take all of those thoughts that I'm seeing when it comes to creating the tone, the landscape, and then bring those thoughts and ideas to my DP and production designer. And then they go off, and then they come back with more of their ideas, and then their idea sparks another idea. It's just so galvanizing. It's so exciting. And I just, I love working with people, and which is really strange because I like being alone. But I really enjoy working with people, and I really enjoy when we are faced with a problem or an unexpected occurrence, when everyone gets together and are collectively exercising solution-based thinking. That is, I can't even put into words how powerful that is.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, and I want to talk about One Night in Miami, but I saw a YouTube of actually it might have been a Zoom call between you and the four actors that played various parts in One Night in Miami. And one of the things, as you're talking about this just now, that occurs to me is when you add people who are really creative and smart and open into a mix, as an idea, as a scene, as a story starts to evolve, and these creative minds are feeding these thoughts into the pot, and you're synthesizing it, right? As the director, that's your job to like make sense of all that. But the energy and the creativity and all of that bubbles into something that we end up enjoying as a finished product. It's just a really dynamic process. And I just really, really appreciate it. So thank you for breaking it down a little bit.
Thank you. Well, thank you for breaking it down even further. I mean, I think what a lot of people fail to realize, they ask actors or people, well, what makes you want to work with this person for the first time? Or what made you want to choose this story or what. I honestly think, great artists just want to be a part of great art. So it doesn't matter if it was the first song that someone's written or the first script that they've written or the first thing that they've directed or the first thing that they've acted in. Yes, experience comes in so many different levels, but even though one person may have more experience than the other, they're a great artist. The inexperienced person is a great artist, and the experienced person is a great artist. The thing that they have in common is that they want to do great art.
Yeah, and we as the audience are the beneficiaries of that. So again, thank you. So I really truly loved One Night in Miami, and then reading about some of the thought processes that you went through in considering the project reinforced for me what I loved so much about it. And the screenplay, first of all, by Kemp Powers, was just so dynamic. And I think you said somewhere along the line, I read that you said it jumped off, it was on the page for you when you got it. But, rising to the challenge of portraying icons. We're not talking about four guys who have like some, anonymity here. These guys are icons. And it mostly took place in one hotel room. So for you making your theatrical debut as a director, I can't imagine that there's a question you haven't been asked. But I did want to read something that you said and then just kind of get you to flow with it if you would. So you said, I didn't want to fail the legacies of these men, meaning Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, Cassius Clay, and my dear friend, Ambassador Shabazz's father, Malcolm X. You said, I felt like I knew these men. I saw my son in these conversations. I saw my father in these conversations. It was on the page when I read Kemp Powers' script. I just felt like what Kemp wrote was so beautiful. If I were a man, I would want to play one of those roles. I wanted to be a part of telling a story that every Black man I know and love can see a bit of himself in that story. That's it, Regina. That was it.
Yeah, I mean that what was it? I mean, it's fortunate and unfortunate that the things that those men were experiencing at that time are the same things that our men are experiencing now, and the same thing that their fathers were experiencing before them, and so on. But in spite of all that, those men still managed to love and to find a way to become fearless when they were having fearful moments. I feel like with those four men, as you pointed out, that we look at them like gods and we don't think about they shed tears, they have fears, they are husbands, fathers, brothers, and we just look at them as just the poster on our wall. And what Kemp was able to do is allow, through his words, allow us to see them as men first, humanize them in a way that I don't think we get the opportunity to see that often when it comes to our men being portrayed. But these are the men that we know. And I'm not saying that that's everyone's experience, but it is my experience. It is the experience that most of the women that are in my life have had. And one thing that I felt was really interesting about all four of the icons, the people that I actually had a relationship with, while I never met any of them except for Jim Brown, were all women. They were their daughters, their granddaughters. And the thing that was so, when speaking to every single one of the daughters or granddaughters, the thing that was the same for all of them is the regard they had for their grandfather or father, the delicate way they speak about their legacies, the very assertive way at times they speak about their legacies. And that actually brought me closer to them. And I don't know that I would have received it the same way if it were maybe a male member. I think it was a familiarity that I saw or that I felt when I was speaking to all of those women. And, I didn't really discover that actually until after I finished shooting. I did, and it was present along the way because they all checked in with me, once while I was shooting, not to check in to see if this is going like this or like that, but checking in with me to see how I was doing, how Regina was doing. And that's just something that women we do for those things that are precious to us. So I felt like their fathers are precious to them, but I felt kind of a protection from them as I was on this journey to actually, and the irony is protection from they gave me that light that felt like, we've got you, without ever saying those words, but they were sharing that light for a person that was probably putting them in one of the most vulnerable places, that they can be put into. These, especially with Malcolm and Ali, people have been telling their stories or portraying them for quite some time. And I would imagine that every single time they get that call, and I know for sure from speaking to one of the daughters, they get that call, there's a certain bit of angst that comes up. Like, what is this going to be? What more do they want from my father? What more do they want from me? And I hope I felt that they knew that I wasn't looking for, my reach out to them was to let them know that my intention is to honor the legacy. And I felt that they received it. And that was my intention. And here's the thing, when it comes to intentions, sometimes the intention isn't received as intended. You can't really control that. But I hope in this case it was.
Well, sometimes the intention isn't received or achieved, but in this case, you did that, Regina, and whether you were conscious of it as you were filming or it just landed somewhere in your subconscious, there was a safety net but around this that made it feel like you were going to be in good hands during this little journey in this room. But what also landed for me, and I don't know that I processed this real time, and maybe it happened afterwards, was the juxtaposition of the iconic status of these men who I loved. I mean, each one of them for different reasons. And in movies, so often, the leading man has the absolute right line at just the right time, and the woman has the right comeback, and it's the repartee is like, damn, I wish I could talk like that, and go back and forth. But they were vulnerable in that room. And whether or not those words were the words they spoke, the sentiment was that, look, man, these heroic figures that you know and love, they had their moments too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We forget about that whenever we're talking about people that are larger than life, because we call them larger than life. We refer to them as larger than life. And we forget about that before anything else, you're human. And so we should allow them the grace to be that, whether they're still with us or not.
So let me leap to a very human moment that you had in a very high profile, maybe one of the highest, most spotlighted events is the Academy Awards. And at the 93rd Academy Awards this past year, you were the host and also a nominee. And just thinking back to how we were all feeling at the time. Now, the Academy Awards normally take place earlier in the year, and because of COVID, they had been pushed later into the year, and they happened to fall 2 days after the Derek Chauvin trial, and the verdict actually was announced. And we're used to the pageantry and the audience and the full house and and it was different. It was you on a stage and scattered tables and social distancing, and could have been easily awkward, but you stepped out there, you looked beautiful, lovely gown on, and you grabbed the mic, and you might have said a few things first, but what I picked up on, and it's probably been repeated often, but I'll read it again here. You said, "I have to be honest. If things had gone differently in Minneapolis, I might have had to trade in my heels for marching boots." You go on to say, "I know a lot of you at home want to reach for your remote when you feel Hollywood is preaching to you. But as the mother of a Black son, I know the fear that so many live, and no amount of fame or fortune changes that." I mean, given that platform and that moment, I think I read somewhere where you didn't have very long to prepare. Did you know exactly, Regina, what you wanted to say when you walked out there? How did that come to you? That sentiment, those words.
Well, I did not know I knew I was presenting. I knew the categories that I was presenting. I was told maybe 2 days before that my categories were going to be at the top of show. And they normally, and it may have been more than 2 days, normally those categories aren't at the top of show. So I thought that odd, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. I blame everything on COVID. So I I just, okay, they'll be at the top of the show. And then 2 days before, I get a call from Steven Soderbergh, and he wants to talk to me about opening the show. So that kind of struck me as odd, because literally we're at maybe at that point, the 40-hour mark before the show starts. And so we had a conversation, and he said that he wanted to open the show, and he wanted the sentiment of what everyone has been feeling to be expressed at the opening of the show, so we can get that out of the way, but not lose the pageantry, if you will, of the night. Mm-hmm. That, it's the kind of the biggest award of all the awards. I think it's probably watched even more internationally than the music awards, that particular awards show. So I said, okay. And then he said, "And I don't think anyone else can do that but you." And I said, "Oh, well, no pressure, huh, Steve?" Hi. So, I sat there in the room when we were over Zoom, and just kind of had to collect myself to, take it in what he was saying. And then firstly, I always go to the place, well, who dropped out before you asking me about that? So I think I went on and asked that question. And he said, absolutely not. And he went on to tell me in quickly why he felt like it was that I was the only one that could do it. So, and then at that point, I kind of felt like, well, all right. I kind of took on a Shirley Chisholm thing. Okay, well, then if not me, then who? So, all right, let's do it. So then it just kind of went to back and forth, working on the speech 12 hours before. And luckily, I had a really good friend who, that they had writers that were already writers for the Academy, 3 Black women. There was a bunch of writers, but there were 3 Black women, and I can't remember all of their names. I just know one was Dream Hampton, and I know Dream because I've known Dream prior to. But a friend of mine who knows me very well, her husband and I worked together. She was able to helped me because we were going to like, I don't know, it may have been almost up to like midnight right before the awards, going back and forth. And she was really able to help me distill all of the things that I wanted to say so that they can be quick sound bites and not, because I can be long-winded. I can go on and on trying to find my point or make sure I'm getting my message across or my thought across. And she was really, Erin really helped me distill the information and the words so that we can accomplish expressing what a lot of us are feeling. Everyone's not a Black mother, so everyone doesn't feel that way. But as a Black mother, with what was going on, there was no way that I could be on that stage and not speak to that because it was all so present. It was all like, you know how it is. Unfortunately, we're going through this every month or so, but you feel it right here in your throat, the anger and how can I express that eloquently and elegantly? So that was the result of there's the again, I've given an example of when all hands are on deck that are operating for a common goal, the results usually are successful.
Yeah, but you remind me of like a chef to some degree because everybody's doing their thing and putting their little spin on it, but the chef at the end of the day has to go more
More, yeah.
tarragon, more. So you had to synthesize all of that information, the moment, the stage, the opportunity, and mom, and and make that land. And it was beautiful. As a Black father of a Black son, I can tell you it certainly resonated with me. So thank you. And speaking of sons, I watched your acceptance speech at the 2015 Emmys, winning Outstanding Supporting Actress, and you brought your son as your date. And I have to tell you, Regina, the video and look on his face when they announced you won. I mean, as I say it now, it really warms me. And during your acceptance speech, you put your hand on your heart and you spoke to your son who was seated. I think he was in the front row. I don't know. He had a great seat, no matter where, but I think it was the front row. And you said, the fact that I get to share this night with you, the best date in the house, you make being a mother my greatest accomplishment. I mean, his pride, your joy, the moment of you two together. I mean, it hit me. You remember that night?
I do. I got a little emotional thinking about it because he's grown so much since then. He's a different young, I mean, he's just the same, your core, willing, hopefully never turns to coal, but he's a different young man now. And I still really like my son and he still really likes me. And obviously, of course, you love your child. That goes without saying. But that I like him and I enjoy spending time with him. It makes me feel like I've done something right, you know? That he still, at 25 years old, sometimes, we'll have conversations and he still shocks me, the things that he still shares with me. And I know that not every parent has that. And even though sometimes I'm clutching my pearls inside, I'm also thinking, oh, thank you, God, for choosing us to have a relationship where we trust each other.
That's fantastic. When I first met you, you were married to Ian's dad, Ian Sr. And though you're no longer together, no longer married, you found a way to successfully co-parent. And I just want to give a shout out to Ian Sr. He was always real cool towards me. And one of those guys I always liked seeing walk through the door during the 90s at Georgia on Melrose. I always liked seeing Ian coming, man. He had that great smile, as your son does. I mean, and he gets that from both of you. But to raise a young man with the job you have meant staying local, I would imagine, a lot, and turning down some work that would have had you away from home. But I think you've mentioned that you've seen some of the result of, parents that had to maybe choose to leave home, and the impact that it had on their kids' lives. But you made that sacrifice, Regina, and it's just heartwarming to see.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I think it's important to I'm glad that you did bring up Ian Sr. because, when you're divorced, especially when your children or child is at a younger age, people quickly say, you're a single mother. Yes, I may have been the main provider, but not without help. My son's father was not in his life. He was in his life. And, when we did get a divorce, if we did not have children, Ian would have moved back to New York. But because we have a son, and it probably would have been an easier way for him to go back to New York. This is not where he's from, LA. But, California has this thing, I don't know about other states, but the child is born here. You have to stay here unless both of you guys agree that your child can move to another state or city. So he stayed here, and without a blink of an eye. Now the thing about it is, yes, that's what you're supposed to do as a parent, but we all know that real life doesn't always work that way.
So we learn. The 90s, while turbulent in LA, I moved to LA in 89, but there were also like some really great times in the 90s I remember really fondly. And the late and oh so great John Singleton, Boyz N the Hood, Friday, How Stella Got Her Groove Back, which, by the way, a few scenes were shot at Georgia. Regina, you've been in some cult classics, but there was a good time to be in LA during the 90s, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's I just crack up when I hear my son's generation, refer to 90s as old school. I'm like, wow, okay. But yet they're always trying to recreate the 90s had enough of individuality that of the old schools to the younger generation, that is the one that sticks with them. That is the one that they are trying to duplicate feeling wise. And I think when I say that, I'm speaking probably more for Black kids in this generation. After the 90s, we went through a long time of not having those Boyz N the Hoods, those do the right things, menace to society. We had, the 90s, we had Moesha. I mean, there were so many different shows and
the
movies
music that was
and
evolving during
music.
that time.
And yeah, they were all connected, and then they went away. So I think that there's a gap. There's like, maybe a movie here and there, maybe a show there and here. And so I think that, this generation feels that Martin, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, all of these things, all of these shows are shows that are airing now and are people's favorite shows now because they can feel that synergy that was happening in the 90s, and that, that Chuck D-ism of it all, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Public Enemy popped that off in like, say, 86, 87, 88, 89. And we went into the 90s with it like what?
So before I let you go, you mentioned Shirley Chisholm, and just wanted to know if there's, anything that you wanted to share with us about when that gets started, or how excited you might be to play this magnificent woman.
Oh, Brad, it's starting. It's starting now. We start shooting in 6 weeks. So I'm in full on Shirley study mode. So I'm terrified and excited all in the same breath. And I imagine that's exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Sounds like the right place. Regina King, get back to work. You can't just sit around here and talk all day, so please go back to work. In all seriousness, no, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time, and it's great to see you.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye. So here we go with my dear friend, longtime sister, Ambassador Shabazz. We're going to talk a little bit about this discussion with Miss Regina King. How about Regina King?
Well, what can one say? She's indeed just like a super house. Many of us of a certain age, have watched her grow up before our eyes, in television and eventually film. And I'm just delighted that the dimension of her spectrum, her artistic spectrum, is being acknowledged and lauded. And she's a woman that people go after, ask questions. She has decisions to make. That's the load that she has to endure now, but she gets to do that. And she's certainly a young lady with lots of integrity and chooses her yeses wisely, And when you were talking about that powerful batting average, no matter what the sport, of all of her accomplishments at a young age, when we were growing up, such as the likes of Sidney Poitier, it was hard to come by to see us standing on a stage accepting the yeses of our contributions. And so it's just really wonderful to listen to her, steady, poised. She's very mindful about what she's going to talk about. I don't know if that has anything to do with the fact that she shares a birthday with Martin Luther King. So she's steady and intentional, just really wonderful.
Yeah, no, I felt the same way. What struck me when you talk about the dimension, of her character, of her personality, when I asked her to name her most memorable live musical performance, and she chose Duran Duran.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought about that. And then this is the sister that was all sister with hoop earrings and giving you that South Central, Duran
Yeah.
Duran. I mean, that's just the broad spectrum that would be, that
All day
speaks to
long,
her.
all day long, just limitless, knowing how, when I'm speaking to her conversations are not just about the industry. It includes her mom, it includes her son, it includes her sister, along with all of the other scopes, the issues that happen in 2020, the human being she is, the woman she is, what roles she gets to play civically. And I would imagine that's with food tastes and music tastes, and having a range of friends and being open to experience, things through their eyes. That's what's really amazing about her generation of artists. She's just not on lockdown. I mean, she's preservist, but not on lockdown when we talk about growth and exploration. And even her favorite food, when she said that she leans in the direction, of Asian cuisine and specifically Thai. And I started thinking about when I was in Los Angeles, and one of my favorite restaurants was a Thai restaurant, and it's just flavorful. We used to say there must be somebody black in the kitchen. That was the joke, right? Because it wasn't like it was just typical. There certainly was a fusion of flavors, so you didn't really need to add condiments. That was the thing, who's burning in that kitchen where you can taste all of the seasonings, and I used to just get the tom kha kai soup, which also had like a coconut in the base. People weren't cooking with coconut, in the 80s and 90s, and, and a chicken satay, and pad thai, and so on and so on. Even the option of rices or curries being red curry, green curry, yellow curry, people had not introduced, in terms of the Asian persuasion of cuisine, they had not shared much about what was Thai cuisine. And so we thought maybe it was like Yul Brynner from the King of Siam, just food in the what does food mean? I mean, we're learning that now when we're tasting things, no matter what the old perceptions were. We're now learning about the range, the culture, the seasonings, the herbs, the preparation, the heartbeat. It's like when hug is in a food.
Yeah, you make me think of the expression, "Oh, he put his foot in it," or "She put his foot in it." when the seasoning is just right, yeah, somebody's foot was in it. So let me ask you, Regina, very delicately, and I think rightfully so, respectfully so, in her concern with how icons are portrayed. Your dad, Muhammad Ali, Sam Cooke, Jim Brown, in One Night in Miami, there's a sensitivity that she obviously brought to that experience. How does that land for you? I know she spoke to you a bit leading up to it, but when you hear someone who really wants to take the care to make sure that they're honoring this person's
You know, that
how does that land for you?
there's a number of ways. I've lived with this a long time, while many people are leaving us now and got to grow old enough. My father is gone 58 years soon, and that's a long time to live with the story being told by someone else as opposed to him being here and part of that authorship. What all of us, my family and many others, what we appreciate is when you at least ask. It's really that simple. It's the effort. You don't have to get it perfect. We know you can't get it perfect. That we're not looking for perfect. We first just appreciate the respect of inquiry. And so she certainly did that. And she knew I could feel it. All of us could feel her sensitivity and the awkwardness and wanting to do it, but also having to manage it based on what the industry's boundaries and capacities and everything were. So we supported her integrity. We supported that, and I know as she's living these journeys, these explorations, even the effort, her doing Shirley Chisholm, and I had a conversation with her about Shirley Chisholm. First of all, I love the fact that that's where she was going. That was of interest. The thing becomes the cut and paste Shirley Chisholm that people talk about over the last decades is not Shirley Chisholm. That's the cut and paste. And what an opportunity to really tell layers of a human story based on how the person actually lived and not based on a headline. And so
Well, that's exactly what I was getting to, because, in the case of, we talked about this, she and I, a little bit, with your dad. We all have seen many times now the clips of him where he's powerfully speaking, and he's, those moments that he was just so electric and charismatic and just dynamic. But there was the other side of him as a human being. And that's where I felt the movie tried to go, where they tried to show certain moments of uncertainty, certain moments of not having exactly the right answer in that particular moment, where you had to step back and you had to breathe and think for a second. Did you get that as well?
Well, it's contrived. I mean, so that's so the areas you have to think in 1964. If you lived long enough, you know where the certainties were. So just like now at 2022, we are not uncertain about what was unveiled in 2020. So depending on, the effort to do so, yes, I appreciated the fact that Malcolm was human, and she and I talked about that, and I really appreciated all of that, little nuances and characteristics, which were great. But there are certain, when you have a chronology of events that take place at a certain time, and 1964 was very pivotal in America. So my father wasn't living with indecision in 1964. 1964 was a very significant shift, public shift, but the decisions had long been in existence for about 3 or 4 years. So those are those things that when you live the life and you really know the timing, you're aware of. And I don't mind artistic license as long as it doesn't skew the direction. I live, because I'm in the industry and I'm also a creative. I get that and I respect it very much. It just happens that in some of these cases, either it's directly attached to my awareness or I know the families, right? So I usually love to introduce folks to one another if they're working on things, so that you're entrusted to be creative, but play with it in the realm of actuality, because especially for African American stories and others notwithstanding, the generations are leaving here. And that's also the loss I get to feel as each one goes. And they were part of my lifeline and my joy and my comfort zone. I really want their stories to live. My father left the earth not knowing that people would know his name 58 years later. And so that these people that we honor, including the one she's about to do, they were just doing the right thing per their day-to-day lives. They had no idea we'd be studying them and valuing them. And the fact that she's about to do Shirley Chisholm, I think that is straight boss. That's just, I cannot wait for that sister to be recognized, because there's two generations that actually don't know her name.
That is so true. Yeah, that's going to be a dynamic project. Yeah,
and
I can't wait for that as well.
It's great that it's Regina King doing it. I love that of her. Her and her sister have a production company, and they're looking for things that matter. And I'm ecstatic by that. So while she's very busy, we periodically get a chance to touch base, and it's not project based. It's really just sort of checking in. So I really dig her. And, she's regimented, while busy, she's just conscientious about, atmospheric sensitivity, meaning the company you keep or one keeps, and how to eat, how to treat herself right, her principles. I mean, she is mindfully engaged in all of those kinds of cognizances. And our conversations or the questions that she poses is really based on a real outcome. It's a journey for her. I appreciate all of those things about her, in addition to the fact that she has this uber batting average.
Yeah, that she does. And, I want to just touch on before we go this, and thank you too for the connection with Regina. It'd been a while since I'd seen her, and I know that you two were in regular touch, and you reached out and asked her to do Corner Table Talk, and she agreed. So, thank you for that.
Sure.
But, like Regina, Ambassador, there are so many people in your personal orbit. Some older than us, some our age, some younger. But folks, and I get to do this regularly, so I try to never take it for granted, but who check in with you, who stay in touch with you for one reason or another, to check on you, your well-being. But I often feel like a lot of it is because of what you give in a conversation, the wellness that you provide, the care that you provide for all of us that are in your orbit. I just want you to touch on that for a second.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think, that's really thoughtful. I'm blessed that I come from a household where that listening component was characteristic of the house. Both my father was a great listener. My mother was instructive. She was a guiding hand. But my father was an amazing listener, and so was my uncle and the people that came around. I got to witness adult people hearing one another and exchanging with one another and not talking over one another. And so with being able to trust being open and hearing people as they are, and I like positive outcomes, in ways that if I have a role I can play, I don't even have to agree with you. If one is on a journey or exploration or trying to experience something constructive, I'm on their side for that journey. And I don't say yes if I don't mean yes, because I'm actually so honest with myself that I could never fudge it if I didn't want to go along with it. But most of the times get out of the way so I can experience it as the one I'm talking with is experiencing it, so that I can navigate based on his or her truth. And for the most part, I'm just really on the quiet, reclusive side. So I think when you're a person that's kind of hermity, you're in touch with your inner thoughts. The temperature is really high for me. I can feel things as if it's present. I could see outcomes as if they are present. And so it's been my comfort to be able to be in those places. What I have to realize, though, is that I'm never in the space of receiving the debris of that journey. Mm-hmm. Because as I age, my buoyancy is not, it's not the same. So it's really being mindful of how you choose your company, how do you spend your time, the things that we always heard growing up. But I think when a person wants to do right, be right, live right, what a joy that is for me to see that.
Words to live by and the art of listening, I think, is something that I'm definitely going to allow to seep into my brain. The unselfishness, I think, that you exhibit when you indulge a person who's talking to you and you hear their words and you give them back thoughtful analysis based on what you heard. I think it's just so valuable, and you do that really well. So
well, thank you, dear friend. You do that as well. I listened to you on the Corner Table Talk, and just based on your opening, and watching the glowing faces of people rediscover their bio through your heart-filled words is also part of that. It's what you all did when people showed up at the cellar, whether they had money. I don't know how many tabs y'all had to cover, but y'all said yes to folks coming in the door. And I remember as a kid, I used to always see that sign, in different establishments that said, reserve the right to, how does it end? We reserve the right to say no.
To refuse service. Yeah.
And I never knew what that meant, because certainly I was always around people that were welcoming, and certainly you all were always that. And so while I only experienced one restaurant with your dad and quite a few with you, it seemed like all kinds of folks were coming in.
Well, you read that right.
and having a seat. They may not come back, but they get to at least come in once, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think we come from that circle of people where hospitality and listening is part of the DNA.
Yeah, thankfully. Well, Ambassador Shabazz, how we move. I love the way you move. Keep moving just like that.
Thank you. And just come on by, get a ticket. Just move along with me.
Yeah, of course. We certainly will. I'll see you soon.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Corner Table Talk is hosted by Brad Johnson, produced by Brad and Linda Ailes Johnson. Theme music, Life Goes On by Bryce Vine. Executive producer, Ken Johnson. Find the Corner Table Talk podcast wherever you get your podcast. Follow, subscribe, rate, and leave a comment. Corner Table Talk is a Mean Old Lion Media production.